What if I told you that the internet's biggest nutrition villain might not actually be a villain? We're talking seed oils today. So, those so called toxic oils that you probably heard you must avoid at all costs. And if you haven't heard that before, I'm very happy, but I'd also be very surprised. Seed oils are anything from canola to sunflower oils. They've somehow become a scapegoat for everything from inflammation to causing chronic diseases. But here's the question: where did this panic come from? And is there any truth behind it? That's what we're going to go into today. Welcome to A Plate Full of Insights podcast. If you haven't watched or listened to our podcast before, welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you have, then welcome back. We're glad to have you with us again. I got two of our dietitians here at Revive Wellness, Matthew and Laura, who you have hopefully seen many times. We're going to go through this. We're going to break down the seed oil controversy. We're going to talk about some of the science, some of the silliness, what really matters when it comes to using seed oils. Should you avoid them? Should you not? What should you look at? And when you're looking at this information online, what can you do? What can you look for? What are some things to think about? So hopefully we'll come out of this episode with some cool things that you'll know about why seed oils may or may not be something to avoid. And I'll let you be the judge. So, Matthew, I'm going to give this one to you. Where in your reading did seed oil panic start?
Well, like a lot of health movements or things like this, a lot of it seems to have started or become popularized online, similar to some more like, let's say, Paleolithic type diet proponents also kind of promote this. Seed oils are bad, seed oils are toxic. And it kind of goes along with we need to do things that are more natural or things that were not processed, in saying that because these industrial seed oils have some processing steps or processes, they must be bad, they must be unnatural, they must be the cause of a lot of our problems. That seems to be where some of this started, but then it just seems to keep going on and on. And now it's like, because it's something that was said before, we're now just kind of continuing it. We're just picking up where others left off and continuing with it many, many years later.
I feel like I have never had so many people ask me questions around what do I do about seed oils than in like the past year. And seed oils aren't new. It's not like seed oils, any products with seed oils are just something that was created like 12 months ago. They've been around a long time. It's very weird that all of a sudden everybody's just like, not everybody, I'm generalizing and oversimplifying, but hey, we should question these things. We should not consume them. We need to, yeah. Laura, what have you seen or heard?
All of the above, but yeah, I'm getting it a lot nowadays too. People actually, like, clients coming in, not even really asking, but they come in and are like, "Oh, I've done really good things for my diet lately. I've cut out all seed oils and now I've gone towards butter and beef tallow and all of those good fats." And then we have to kind of like back it up a little bit and unpack that, because I think it is so common. It's like the common internet knowledge to think that seed oils are bad for you just because it has spread through social media and whatnot. So it's a tough one, because now that it is common knowledge, we kind of have to work extra hard to show why is that not actually the case. And I guess when I say common knowledge, it's not true. So that's something good to establish here, that we're not necessarily worried about these seed oils, and they're actually very healthy for you in moderation, as everything is. So yeah, I would say that's the overall experience for me, is having to backpedal a little bit when I hear that with clients.
And probably try to not lose your temper a little bit or other things that may not necessarily be 100% appropriate to do in a session with a one-on-one client.
Misinformation out there can get us going, yes. But no, I mean, it's no shame to people who hear this stuff, right? Because it's just all that's out there. But yeah, can get me going sometimes for sure.
Yeah, it's really just people trying to do what they believe is best for their health based off of what they've heard, and then kind of going from there. Although, unfortunately, as we'll talk about, this isn't really based in a lot of evidence. And it, again, just seems to be something that keeps growing and growing and has gotten seemingly worse this year for some reason. But it does, again, seem to be based in kind of just misunderstanding of how these things are made, or because there's processing, it's inherently bad. I think one other important piece to discuss is that these oils are often used in processed foods or in foods that would be considered unhealthy. But again, we'll discuss this a little more. Just because it is an ingredient that's commonly used there doesn't mean that it is the problem ingredient or that it inherently is the problem with how it's made. It's just a really commonly used thing in a lot of foods. And I think because of that, that's also another reason why it's seen as so bad.
Well, let's go down that path then. So there's a couple things that you've noted uh, in our notes here that there's kind of some key things around seed oils that are targeted arguments for people that are talking about seed oils being, unhealthy for you. I see the classic, and I'll say classic with a heavy eye roll, being their pro-inflammatory. Which, what have you seen with that one? Inflammation in seed oils.
These claims are often made with varying levels of vagueness. Like, what do we mean by that? Pro inflammatory in what way? Which inflammatory markers are they increasing? What research is there on certain seed oils increasing certain markers of inflammation? It tends to not be that specific and quite vague in nature. But so those are more so what the claims are. Again, very general, just generally talking about inflammation and saying that they're bad because they cause that. But if we do look at research on seed oil intake and inflammation, we see that higher intake of seed oils compared to other forms of fat that are more saturated actually looks like it improves or reduces markers of inflammation, and that it also and that we also see differences in oxidative markers. So, just to give some examples, some studies are going to look at some markers of higher oxidation. So things like TNF alpha, things like C-reactive protein, things like that. We see that these markers are actually improved. And if we look at antioxidant markers for things like superoxidized dismutase, catalase, glutathione peroxidase, and again, we'll see that these are improved in these studies, and we'll link to some of those in the show notes here.
So it appears as though, like, we got a good amount of research, and I would agree with you. The research that I've looked at that looks at uh, fat intake, in particular seed oils, any type of oil, canolas, safflower, sunflower, etc., is usually positive effects. So it almost feels like there's this kind of idea that seed oils are associated with be the high fat intake, or low diet quality, and it's not necessarily because of seed oils in particular. They can be a marker for that indirectly if you really wanted to view it like that, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of foods that are less healthy, more processed options that have those oils in them, but it's not because of those oils that they're particularly less healthy foods. But then making this giant leap, like you need to stretch pretty good before you make this leap kind of leap, that means that all seed oils are problematic, which is the most massive of generalizations that one could really ever make about something like this, in my opinion.
I hope we can all agree that maybe like a donut deep fried in canola oil isn't the same as maybe like a salad made with a vinaigrette with canola oil. Like there's a lot of other things going on in those different types of dishes that can potentially increase or decrease your risk for chronic disease. And even then too, it's everything over time, right? If your entire diet is donuts, yeah, maybe we have something to chat about apart from just seed oils. um, but yeah, it's all those like kind of extremes that we take it to sometimes where um, people kind of fearmonger about these specific ingredients when in reality it's never just one ingredient that is causing all chronic disease or all inflammation, whatever that means, right? So putting it into context is always good.
Yes, context. We like context. This next piece, Matthew, always makes me laugh. Talk to us about a little bit about seed oils and how they are processed and some of the things that are done in the processing and how those things are targeted.
Yeah, so another common claim that is used to demonize seed oils is the use of hexane in their processing. So it is true that hexane is used in the processing of most seed oils, helps with the extraction of the oils from the seeds. This is different than cold pressing, where those are not used. So there are options available that don't use this process. They're more expensive, but not all seed oils use this process in itself. But if we do look at this process and its impact, what we see is that the hexane that is used in the process does not end up in the finished product in significant amounts. It is removed after the hexane processing, and very, very small, safe residual amounts are left in, or remain, I should say, not that we're like pouring it in for fun. There's some that is still left after the extracting process, and then this also kind of evaporates if we heat it up to cook it. So in the final process, if you use it for cooking, not really consuming any. And if you are consuming it in a more cool or cold manner, so not cooking with it, but adding it to food, there are still very tiny, safe amounts that are left in. And these amounts that can be left in are legally regulated in different countries. So there are requirements for what can be left in. It is an amount that is not harmful to human health, and this is legally enforced. And research suggests that companies are following these limits. So when people do studies to analyze what is actually left in here, it is well below the safe amounts in many countries. Even if we look at the differences in these legally allowed limits between different jurisdictions, so if we look at, for example, the amount that's allowed in the European Union, we find that even in commonly found seed oils in Canada and the US, we are far below that limit. And it takes much more than any human would ever consume to actually be harmful. Even if you regularly consume the 90th percentile seed oil intake in the United States, you are well below the safe limits in all of these different jurisdictions. So the grain of truth here is that it is true that hexane is used in the processing. However, it is not left in the final thing that you're eating in an amount that would actually be harmful to human health. And there are also versions available that don't use this process at all that you can also purchase, although they are more expensive for sure.
I'm curious, like to reach the level of hexane intake that would be problematic. Have you seen anything? I know this exists for things like sweeteners in sodas, like how much you'd have to consume in order to reach the researched problematic amount of that particular substance. In this case, hexane. How much seed oil would you need to actually consume to reach the limit?
One study that I found said that it would take 4,900 grams in a day. So, well above any amount that you would ever consume ever. That's more than the amount of water you would drink in a day. That's more than, yeah, there's no way you're actually going to consume that amount in any amount that any human would actually ever consume. It is very safe.
Bucket of seed oil. Love it.
I remember what this is so off topic, kind of, but I remember watching a video of somebody, a review of somebody who did this, that they drank an entire bottle, like a liter of soy sauce, and they died because that was like such an insane amount of sodium. So it's like more dangerous to drink something like soy sauce than it is even like that much seed oil to be at risk of whatever hexane does to you, right? So put it into perspective. Nobody's eating these large amounts of things for it to have that crazy of an effect. And if you did so, then all of our food could be dangerous in those amounts, right?
Yeah. And if you use areas with even the lower level limits, it is still, again, way above even the 90th percentile of consumption in any country. There's no way you're getting there, even if we go to the lower boundary of what's found as that unsafe limit.
Okay, so this is clearly not at all logical, this argument. Um, Not to mention that, like, if people were like, oh, you can still consume seed oils, but have the cold pressed versions so that you don't have any chance of consuming any hexane residue. Of course, you mentioned there's cold pressed. Those are pricey though. Those are not cheap. So, like, if there's no reason based on the argument at hand to consume the pricier option, then save yourself a little bit of money. And I mean, when it comes to seed oils, I don't look super close, but I don't feel like there's many cold pressed canola oil salad dressings on the shelves at the stores. I don't know if that's super. Olive oil, yeah, but yeah, silliness. Uh, any other claims that have come up when it comes to seed oils? These two are like the kickers. I feel like these two are like the top, but any others that you've come across?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like I've come across we're at the point where seed oils can just do anything and everything wrong when it comes to diet. They've taken on kind of a persona of just being bad. So I've heard seed oils can cause obesity, they can cause our typical inflammation, they can cause diabetes, they can cause cancer. They can cause literally any disease because they're just that bad for you and cause the inflammation, which is the root of all disease, as some people might say. So, yeah, don't know if I have much else to add on to that except for the fact that, like, there's not really any evidence to say that they do so uniquely. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Have you guys heard any crazy way out there ones other than our typical lovely chronic disease that we have?
Nah, it's those ones. Nothing is coming to me. I mean, I'm picturing some dude walking through a grocery store looking at salad dressings and oils and complaining about them. But like, it's what we've already mentioned. I can't think of any other ones personally.
Yeah. Main claims are generally obesity and other chronic disease, which we'll go into that data as well.
Well, on that note, why don't we take that step? Unless Laura, you had something jump to your mind.
I was just gonna say I typed in my search bar seed oils cause, and it's inflammation, sunburn, acne, diarrhea, heartburn, headaches, high blood pressure. So those are the top search results.
Sunburn, like if I use
Yeah,
it if
that's
you use it as
a
like a
new one.
tanning oil, or like,
Maybe.
Well, yeah, if you're thinking it's going to be sunscreen and it's like, oh, this made me burn, it's like you could literally use anything that's not sunscreen. It's going to make you burn, but it's because it's not sunscreen.
Yeah, have not really heard that one before. So don't know why that's in there, but I guess it was like the third most common search uh with seed oil. So maybe a whole nother thing for another day.
Yeah. I let's take thing and then general symptoms that can be associated with anything, connect it with really strong and emotionally charged arguments, and then sell people on this is a problem that you have probably, and then maybe sell them a supplement or some crap. Who knows?
and if you search seed oils make or seed oils made, you'll get seed oils make me sick, seed oils make me bloated, seed oils make you hungry, seed oils make you tired, seed oils make my stomach hurt, seed oils make me nauseous, seed oils make me break out. So it does all those things too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Made my hair fall out.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't heard of that one.
Feel like we're projecting a lot of things onto seed oils. Poor seed oils.
Might there be other things at play here? I don't know. Maybe, just maybe. Let's dig into a little bit of the research. Matthew, you alluded to this a couple times. I feel like it would be a good use of of time to walk people through when we actually look at some of the research in these areas. What do we actually see? Not what is the trust me bro version of things you'll see on some TikToks and reels and things like this, but what actually shows up in the research and how you actually ought to interpret this and not make massive generalizations. Matthew, I'll give you the first one here. What have you seen in this study?
Yeah, let's go there next. So, yeah, we were not paid by big seed oil to say this, but we're saying things that are true here. There was a study actually released earlier, or there was a study published earlier this year. It's called Butter and Plant Oils Intake and Mortality, and this essentially compared people over a multi-decade period for their level of intake of plant-based oils as well as butter, and saw what some of the outcomes were. And in this study, they saw that those who had the highest quartile intake of plant based oils had a 16% lower mortality rate than those who were in the lowest quartile of plant based oil intake. So we split the group essentially into 4 equal parts. And if we compare that quarter that had the highest and the lowest intake, 16% lower total mortality rate in the highest compared to the lowest. They also saw that the highest quartile of butter intake saw a 15% higher risk of total mortality compared to the lowest quartile of butter intake. So these results so far suggest that some of these plant-based oils are actually going to be better for human health. Another aspect was if for the same person, if you substituted butter intake that they were already having with plant-based oils, this also reduced total mortality, this reduced cancer mortality, and this reduced cardiovascular disease mortality. And this was a relationship where we saw, as you change this in 5-gram increments each day, this is also an association where we saw that if it was swapped in 5-gram increments, where we were substituting the butter with plant oils, that this reduced mortality and reduced total mortality in cancer and cardiovascular disease mortality. There was also a linear association there. So it was, quite strong results. And again, this is over a period of over 30 years. So very long, robust study with over 200,000 people, about 222,000 people. So this isn't like a tiny short study. These results were seen in a very large group of people over a very long period of time. And other highlights here include that we should note that confounding variables were adjusted in the study. So those really big results here we see do take these things into account, where we did see these better outcomes when plant-based oils were used as opposed to butter. One last thing I'd like to add, as some people will possibly use this as a defense or a rebuttal, something that's important here is that this association was seen not just in plant-based oils, so some people's mind may go to like olive oil, but it was seen in these more commonly demonized seed oils as well. So canola oil, soybean oil, and olive oil all had the strongest protective impact that was seen in this study. Safflower oil also had a very positive impact, but not to the same extent. But I just wanted to note that this wasn't just like olive oil lifting it all up, which is an oil that is commonly defended by people who hate on seed oils, but canola oil, soybean oil saw these very strong results as well.
I'm going to throw a potential rebuttal at I think I've seen this before, and I will unpack why it's the dumbest thing ever. So with basically what you just said, I can absolutely picture somebody going, yeah, but if you look at butter and what butter is used in, and what's commonly, like when you think of products that are at the grocery store and things like that that have a lot of butter in them, of course, because if it's baked goods or other things like that, of course, if their intake of those types of things is higher, then mortality is going to be affected. This is literally the reason. Like, rewind 10 minutes in this recording and go back to when we just talked about how context matters, because I will literally see people go, seed oils are bad, But the research that shows seed oils are good when comparing to things like butter, those are flawed. But then they will use the exact same opposite argument in other causes. So like the shifting the goalposts is just bonkers. It's absolutely happened many times. I can see somebody saying that about this particular study. And when you go, but oh, we can apply that same line of thinking in seed oils, and they go, no, 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 we can't do that. No, no, no. Too logic, man. When you see linear association with something like this in such a large scale study with so many people, like that's, yeah, speechless in a way.
They also, in some of the analyses they did where they tried to control for factors, they controlled for diet quality overall. So even people who had similarly healthy diets, similarly healthy habits like physical activity, rates of smoking, things like that, even if we controlled for all of that, we still did see better health outcomes in the seed oil plant-based oil groups, but mostly seed oils in that.
Yeah, to add on to that rebuttal, and what I've heard a lot is people saying like, um, pretty sure it's called the French paradox, which I remember kind of learning about in our education, but that French people have like the lowest rates of heart disease, yada yada, or chronic disease, but they have like the highest rates of butter, like croissants and all of that good pastry and cheese and stuff like that. Um, so why is that? What like the overwhelming amount of evidence has kind of come to the conclusion of is, yeah, it mostly matters your lifestyle and overall diet, and not just the little things, right? Like those pastries and things like that that don't take up the entire percentage of your diet, along with lots of walkable neighborhoods, lots of social time during meals, all of that good stuff that can positively impact stress and lifestyle management, all of that, that probably has more of an effect than one single thing like butter.
All right, so this is a really recent study. I feel like this is a good representation of what we've seen in other areas, and also how you, when you're looking at research or hear about research or hear people talking about the research, you can use those thought processes and things in your mind when you're thinking about them to understand, is this a legit argument, is this not, etc. But we have a couple other ones that we can dig into a little bit. Matthew, you have a couple other that you have listed here. Can you walk us through the other ones that you have?
Yes, I'll go over these ones more briefly, but we'll link these for those that want to read it. So another study we'll link is a 2019 meta-analysis that is on the effect of canola oil consumption and blood lipid profiles. And what that study found was that those who had higher canola oil consumption had lower total cholesterol and lower LDL cholesterol compared to those who had more saturated fats. So that's something to consider there. Another study had to do with omega 6 fatty acids and cardiovascular disease. So, one thing that some seed oil um, opponents, I don't know what the word is, one thing that some people will say about seed oils is that omega 6 fatty acids are really bad for you and will cause chronic disease and such. But research also suggests that even not just omega 3, but omega 6 fatty acids are also linked with lower risk of major cardiovascular events. This isn't going to be to the same extent as omega 3 fatty acids. Those are certainly more health promoting. But we do not see in human studies that omega 6 fatty acids are harmful in the way that is claimed in some of these like seed oil posts and such online.
Plug for the last episode that we just recorded, I suppose, depending on the ordering of things, where we also talked about omega 3s. That one will be available as well. Yeah, I can't. I mean, you when you talk about these things, it's hard to disagree with them. This is what we're seeing in the research, and it just makes me scratch my head, going, so where's the hole that people are picking at? I don't know. Okay. I have seen this one a little bit, but you mentioned it as we were preparing for this one, Matthew. Smoke point of different oils and how this may impact the, I guess, either health promoting elements of an oil, or maybe detrimental when you look at this. What anything that you've seen in particular when it comes to smoke point of different oils?
I can take a crack at it. I feel like uh, the image that I see in front of me is in Celsius, and as a Canadian, I feel sad that like my brain works in Fahrenheit for this. But yeah, different seed oils have different smoke points. So once you heat it up to a certain temperature, it can actually essentially burn the oil and release, I believe it's called acrolein.
Yeah, because I mean, when we look at different foods, like a lot of the problematic compounds that are created in food when heated to a high temperature, and it's not just oils, like there's other, food products and foods that when you heat them for a high period of time, like there's, problematic compounds that some of which have been associated with things like cancer and heart disease and things like that, some Alzheimer's even, but it's like you have to heat them for so long, and this process will also make the product taste really bad and bitter and gross or burnt. And so you probably aren't going to consume a lot of them to the point where it's problematic because it's naturally self limiting in the fact that it's going to taste bad and you're probably not going to want to eat it anyways. I feel like that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Last stop before we wrap up this episode, I've seen this one a little bit. We talk seed oils, plant oils. There's always some person that's bringing up something with margarine, and I feel like this is a whole like one is more natural than the other. But with regards to margarine, what are some of the key arguments that people come up with that say margarine is not good related to seed oils?
Yeah, I think it's often like the comparison to butter, because that's kind of what it has tried to emulate in the past. And that um again, in the past, the processing of making oils into a texture similar to butter, so like solid at room temperature, involved partially hydrogenating oils to make it that texture. Um, that in the past has created trans fats in margarine, which actually was increasing risk of heart disease, chronic disease, all of that good stuff, or bad stuff. Um, and so there was a little bit of a panic with margarine in the past. Since then, had some regulations passed in Canada, where margarines have to be fully hydrogenated so that the trans fats are um, low to non-existent in margarine. So it's a non-issue now. Nonetheless, the perception still remains because it was technically something that we wanted to pay mind to for our health in the past. Um, it's not been updated for the people who think that seed oils are still bad for you, right? So good to get an update on that. And yeah, that kind of appeal to nature fallacy. I have heard lots of my clients chat about how margarine used to be pink, because the dairy industry didn't want people to buy margarine on accident, thinking it was butter and all of that stuff. So it came pink. So I kind of get it. I don't think I would want to buy a pink margarine, but
I didn't know that. Well, you learn something every day. That's going to make it look like a cleaning product.
Or it came with, it used to be like really, really white, and sometimes it came with a little yellow packet of food coloring. So at home, you could make it look like butter, but the dairy industry didn't want it to be sold looking like butter. So pretty crazy. But that's just more of a fun fact. Now it's all good. And it looks like butter.
Fun fact of the day. Well, for those that have made it thus far in the episode, hopefully we have beat to death the idea that the arguments against seed oils are absolute nonsense. and can be unraveled very easily, sometimes using the exact same arguments that people justify other types of fat consumption like butter. That's, always a fun time. To recap, seed oil is not necessarily the issue. Context matters. A lot of things that are wrapped up in this argument that are being used, overgeneralized, the wrong fallacies used to make arguments that don't necessarily exist. Ultimately, like we have talked about repeatedly, in the context of your overall eating pattern is where most of the conversation should lie. Like Laura mentioned, if seed oils are an issue for you, but that comes because you're consuming a box of 6 donuts every day, no, conversation is much different than if your seed oil consumption comes from salad dressings on salads. The conversation that we would have with people is not necessarily pointing out seed oil consumption at that point. The conversation is much different. So whatever that is for you, make sure you then spend some time in thinking about what the context is for you, because it absolutely matters. And hopefully you will spend a little bit less time worrying about some of the stuff that you see on social media about seed oils, and sit there and maybe just chuckle to yourself a little bit and then swipe away and not waste your time with it. Hopefully you can get to that point. Any last thoughts, Matthew or Laura, before we wrap the episode? No. All right. No. All right. Very good. Well, we'll wrap the episode there. Thank you to everybody for making it this far. Thanks for watching and listening wherever you are. Make sure to check out previous episodes. We have a ton of them, and we got some fun ones coming up as well as we head into the rest of 2025. Thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe, do all of the podcasty, YouTube-y things, and we'll see you next time.